Which I wanted to direct you to another question, like, am I the voice in my head or am I the person listening to it?
Well, that's a good point. I think the voice is a. I think consciousness is, and my take on it is, it is a way of drawing attention to salient aspects of the calculations. So, if
Mm-hmm.
you think about any complex action, there's a multi. Let's say you're hungry, okay? You decide you want to go and you're going to go to McDonald's. So you don't know whether you want the chicken or the burger. Okay, so along that chain of decision processes, okay, and it was initiated by an unconscious process, namely the feeling of hunger. Hunger then is a physiological state that then feeds into the brain. The brain interprets that signal as, oh, I think I'm hungry. What do I do? And therefore, it sets off a chain reaction of how you do it. Okay, so in a sense, you don't need to have the actor. We're kind of epiphenomenal, where we're kind of sitting above all the kind of calculations that's going on. But then let's say you get to the checkout window, you're looking at the chicken nuggets and you're looking at the burger, and you start speaking, I wonder what I want. Okay, so then you have this conscious kind of evaluation in your head and you're running back over the past, what do I think I want? And then, so that means you're checking back all your past history. When was the last time I had chicken nuggets? And by the way, they weren't that good. And so you do have a voice, and certainly most of us will report that we often hear ourselves talking to ourselves. And I think that's the way that the brain can actually then direct attention towards the salient aspects and review them. So it's really an attentional system. It's just drawing and highlighting the salience of the sorts of choices that you might have. And by the way, that voice that's in our head, I talk about in my new book, The Science of Happiness. Very often that voice is a kind of inner critic. We spend a lot of our times reviewing our past choices and worrying about the future. And quite often it's this inner voice that we experience in our head that we listen to. Now, it's not like we're we're getting into very deep, difficult territory about what is the phenomenology of hearing your own voice and so on. But it's kind of interesting that when you're learning to read, for example, children have to speak it out loud. All right. So when they're learning the words, they literally are saying the words. With experience and practice, they learn to internalize it. Okay. So they don't have to say the words as they're reading. But if you take an adult who can read silently and you place little electrodes on their tongue whilst they're reading, you can see they're actually speaking the words. They're just not articulating them. So in other words, these processes, unless they require conscious awareness or attention, they can be subsumed and become automatic. In the same way that when you're learning to drive a car, you're paying all your attention to shifting the gears and trying to coordinate the whole thing. And it requires a lot of attention.
So it's
But
like a
eventually it
self-referential
becomes
loop.
second nature. Yeah, it becomes so it doesn't require conscious awareness. So you can do it offline, as it were. So going back to your original point about what is it, am I listening to what I'm saying? I think what happens in those circumstances is you can use language as a way of directing your attention and salience to the various sorts of aspects of the task at hand.
But the Buddhist philosophy takes this one step higher. Like, you are the one looking at all these. You are the observer above all these.
Well, in anatta, of course, the idea is that enlightenment comes from losing that observer, and that is the path towards enlightenment. There's a similar, again, and going back to I've got this book. It's coming out in Canada in about a couple of months' time, by the way. I talk about the route to happiness is really relinquishing and letting go of what I call the egocentric self. Because the problem, when you have a very strong sense of self and you're listening to your voice and you're reviewing your problems, we're our own worst critics for a start. But we also tend to blow everything out of proportion because we don't have the right comparisons to make. If people are so self-centered, they very often don't notice that other people are suffering as well. And so one of the suggestions about how to become a happier person is just to shift your attention away from being egocentric to becoming more what I call allocentric or other-focused. Now, we have to do that anyway as children, because children are born very egocentrically. They can't even conceive that other people have different thoughts than they have. But when they start to mature and deal with siblings and interact in the playground, they've got to learn to understand that other people have different opinions. They've got to become socialized, because if they don't become socialized, they'll be ostracized. And that's really the worst thing you can do for a child. They need to be included. So a lot of development is learning to give up your egocentric view and become more allocentric, but we never lose it because of the way that consciousness is from the first person perspective. So as an adult, we might say that we're thinking about other people, but ultimately we're kind of very self-centered. And yet we can train ourselves through various practices and various activities that I recommend that we can do to become more allocentric. And the benefit of that is, first of all, it quietens down this inner critic that we all have. It allows you to get things into perspective because you soon discover other people have got other things going on in their lives, which actually explains the way that they've been behaving towards you. You might think that they don't like you, but it turns out that they've got a parent with cancer or something else that is preoccupying them. So it's not that they don't like you, it's because they've got other things going on in their lives. So you start to see the relative the complexity of social interactions, the complexity of people who've got stuff going on in their lives. And then, of course, the other benefit is that if you do form these bonds socially and connecting with other people, then you benefit from the reciprocal or reciprocity of support. So they're more likely to help you out rather than if you're a real narcissist who doesn't really care about other people. So yeah, we admire narcissists because they seem so self-assured and positive. But ultimately, I don't think any of us would really like to be friends with a true narcissist because they just generally take advantage of everyone else. So yeah, but it is tied, the concept of, the pursuit of happiness and the sense of self, I think are very much related.